Allan, you're very welcome to the ScaleX Insider podcast. I'm really delighted and thrilled to have you on the show today.
Hey, pleasure to be here.
Brilliant to be speaking with you finally, because I know we've been trying to make this happen for some while. Look, you know intimately, our vision is to inspire, connect, and enable millions of ambitious leaders of small and medium-sized enterprises to scale with purpose. So to kick off, what does scaling with purpose mean to you, Allan?
I've been giving this a lot of thought lately, and particularly, the pandemic's given us a lot of time to think. But really, to me, it's all about living life on our own terms as entrepreneurs. When I speak to most entrepreneurs and ask them why they started their business, financial freedom definitely comes up there. But a lot of times, it's like they wanted to do life on their own terms. They didn't want to sit in a cubicle and report to someone and do meaningless work. So. And I've been thinking about really how do we live life in what I call the Goldilocks zone. So, most things in life that we pursue, money, wealth, success, fame, and all of that, the returns sort of cap out at a particular level, and then yes, there are returns beyond that. So there's diminishing returns. So how do we find that Goldilocks zone where we're making enough income, where we've got enough impact, where we've got enough fame or notoriety, where it's the perfect amount that's not kind of taking over your life, but it's providing you what you want. So to me, in short summary, it's basically living life on your own terms.
Yeah, I love that. The Goldilocks zone and optimizing your return on life as opposed to return on equity. Brilliant.
Exactly.
Well,
exactly.
Look, you have written an absolute masterclass on marketing, which is arguably one of the most practical books I've ever read on marketing.
Oh, thank you.
And what I found phenomenal is your background isn't even in marketing. So what was the motivation for you to write a book all about marketing?
Well, I wrote the book I wish was around when I was first learning marketing. I started learning marketing just because I had to. I was a dead broke IT geek. I had no idea when it came to sales and marketing. In fact, I remember speaking to my business partner at the time saying ridiculous stuff. Like I remember we had a conversation once on the way to lunch, and I said, we've got a great business. We've got good margins. Customers love us. And so we've really cracked the major part of business. And there's this little sliver of business that we haven't quite cracked, which is called sales and marketing. And so I thought I had the major thing figured out, and there was this minor thing that we needed to sort out, and little did I know I had it completely ass backwards. So really, marketing and sales, that's the major piece of the puzzle. And your product or your service, very important, of course, but that's the minor piece of the puzzle. That's not the important thing. So I was mixing up my majors and my minors, which was a massive mistake. So to me, that was a real turning point. And so I spent about a decade trying to learn marketing the difficult, expensive way, which was through trial and error. I attended every seminar, I read every book, and I got value from each of those things. But I got what felt like one piece of the puzzle from here, another piece of the puzzle from there, another piece of the puzzle from there. And so when I'd finally worked all of this out, I wanted to write the book I wish I had at the time, which was literally at the start of this book, we define what is marketing, right? Yeah. And literally we go through a very simple definition, and that's something that I needed at the time. I used to think marketing's advertising or about logos or colors or whatever. And so I couldn't be further from the truth. So I really wrote the book I wish I had at the time. And I think that's the reason why it's resonated with a lot of people, because I assume nothing. And we really go from zero to hero when it comes to learning marketing and figuring out what is it, what do we need to, what's step one, what's step two, what's step three, all the way through to how you generate referrals, upsell, how you increase customer lifetime value, and all of those sorts of things.
Brilliant. Well, we're going to jump into a lot of that today, and I want to commend you for writing a book that on marketing that's pretty much jargon free. It's so accessible, and I want to go back because I was smiling. My background's in finance, and I was really smiling when I read your definition of marketing. You've referenced it there a couple of minutes ago. Can you share that with our listeners? Your little story around the definition of marketing.
Yeah, so it's a little kind of story that sort of encompasses what marketing is in just a little story form. So I say, look, if the circus is coming to town and you paint a sign saying circus coming to the showground Saturday, that's advertising. If you put the sign on the back of an elephant and walk it into town, that's promotion. If the elephant walks through the mayor's flower bed and the local newspaper writes a story about it, that's publicity. And if you get the mayor to laugh about it, that's public relations. And if the town citizens go to the circus, you show them the many entertainment booths, explain how much fun they'll have spending money at the booths, answer their questions, and ultimately they spend a lot at the circus, that's sales. And if you planned the whole thing, that's marketing.
I absolutely love that. There's a couple of other points that you make before you actually introduce us to the one-page marketing plan, the 3 acts and the 9 components within the book. So a couple of things I just want to pick up on before we get into our mini masterclass. Firstly, you say that the one-page marketing plan is the fastest path to the money. Now, is that a bait? Is that a hook to get people to read? Can you explain that a little bit further? And I'd also like you to illuminate why leverage is so critically important, and they're both related.
Yeah, it is a hook, but it's also a filter, because I wanted to be very, very clear that this book is about how do we generate a return? How do we generate cash flow? How do we create a profitable business? This is not one of those fluffy branding, storytelling books or whatever. Not that I'm against any of those sorts of things, that they all have their place, and that's all awesome. But I wanted it to be very clear what this is about, and knowing that was going to attract some people, and it was going to repel some people, which is what we really need to do with our marketing. We've got to figure out who this is for. And so I was doing what I advocate other people to do, which is you do need to be polarizing. You do need to have a good hook, and you do need to be clear about who you want to attract, which by definition means there are going to be some people we're going to repel. So with that, I was being very, very clear about the hook. And when it comes to leverage, that is such an important concept, and it is really the foundation of what we teach and what this book is about. And leverage in basic terms is a force multiplier. How do we get more output from the inputs that we put in? So how can we put a small number of inputs and get a huge return, a huge force multiplier when it comes to our marketing, our business, everything that we do? Because that is really the only way to create wealth. Because if you take a linear approach, the only way to create more wealth is to work more. And we only have 24 hours in a day, and we want to sleep some of that time, and we want to spend some of that time with family, and we want to do some of the things we want to do. So like, if you want to double your income, the linear way to do it is to double the amount of time that you work, and that's really not practical for most of us. A lot of us are at the edge of the maximum time we want to work. So if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to take a linear approach, which really caps out very, very quickly, we've got to think about a leveraged way. So a way where the outputs that we get are in excess of the inputs that we put in.
Yeah. I love that. Somebody reminded me recently that on average we have 900 months on the planet. We sleep 300 of those, and I'm halfway through, so I've 300 months left. So I'm very tuned into leverage and really optimizing the return on the time that you spend. And the podcast is an example. We were chatting off air. We'll record for an hour, but the content is repurposed across so many different platforms. So I mean, in terms of reaching a wider audience, albeit a target audience, is significant for an hour's recording. So I love that concept. You've referenced it just in the explanation there of the book about the importance of polarizing, and really in that context, honing in on your target market. So there will be a school of thought, certainly within the SME world, where we've just got to go out with a machine gun and make as much noise across so many sectors as we possibly can. I think that comes to a point where they're lacking a little confidence to go truly niche. Let's kick off with the first component of the one-page marketing plan in terms of the importance of selecting your target market. Can you share that with the listeners, Allan, please?
Yeah, this is an absolutely foundational element. So how do we figure out who our people are? Because here's the thing, most people will say, oh, look, my product or my service is great for everyone, right? And they may be 100% true. So you might be an accountant, you may be a lawyer, a financial advisor, and maybe you can help everyone. And, you know, as entrepreneurs, we want to be generous and we want to help as many people as possible and we want to do well. And it feels like it's the right thing to do to cast the net wide. Hey, we can help anyone and everyone. But here's the thing. When we say we're for anyone and everyone, we kind of really lose people's attention, because people's attention is now so fleeting. And when it comes to your messaging, which is the next block, and we'll talk about messaging in a moment, but you're going to lose people. Like, the whole goal of our messaging is for someone to say, hey, that's for me. And if you say, look, hey, we do our service, whatever it is, butcher, baker, candlestick maker, whatever, for anyone and everyone, nobody is ever going to see your message and say, hey, that's for me. So what we want to determine is a niche that's an inch wide and a mile deep. And the most common objection I get is, look, well, you know, aren't I going to limit myself with who I'm working with? And the answer to that is, well, these are the people that we're actively pursuing in our marketing. That doesn't mean if someone comes to you from outside of your niche that you can't do business with them. You can if you want to, and you don't have to if you don't want to. But really, who are we going to spend our precious limited resources going after? So, and when I say precious limited resources, I mean your money in terms of advertising, in terms of your time, in terms of your energy. So who are we going to actively pursue? So who is someone that will really value what you do and pay you a lot of money for it? Who's going to be really fun to work with? And, you know, who's going to be really, really profitable to work with? So there's some of the criteria that we really want to be thinking about when it comes to target market. Because I guarantee you, if we got a list of all of your clients right now in an Excel spreadsheet, and I said to you, look, sort them from most ideal, most perfect customer to least ideal, we would have, you know, the top 5 or 10%, you would say, I love working with these guys. They're so profitable, so easy to work with. They pay on time. They love what I do. They refer other clients to me. And then if we look at the bottom of your list, you're like, boy, this person's painful, always complains, always difficult to work with, never pays on time, all of those sorts of things. So what we want to do is we want to get rid of or replace the suboptimal clients with clients that are optimal, that you love working with, that are profitable, that value what you do. And so if we do that, that's going to definitely be a leverage point in your business.
Yeah, this resonates so strongly. And I think going back to the opening question of operating within your Goldilocks zone, you know, ultimately you want to be doing the work that inspires you, which plays to your greatest competence, where you're in flow, to use that word, you know, where you can optimize the return for others and bring the maximum amount of value for the lowest amount of effort on your own part, because it's work that you absolutely love doing, and it's a skill set that you know that you're really, really good at in terms of operating in that Goldilocks zone. And just in my own business, in the context of Simple Scaling, which we launched 3 years ago, the moment, you know, when I exited the previous business, I was invited to have conversations with startup people, with those in larger corporates, maybe going back in, becoming an executive in larger corporates. And this was all very flattering, but I knew intuitively that it wasn't right. And whenever we actually created and defined, and I defined my own purpose to inspire, connect, and enable ambitious leaders of SMEs to scale with purpose, it's incredible how that acted as a filter in screening out those startup invites and those
Yeah.
corporate invites, and so and intuitively you feel in balance. So once you've done that, you've alluded to it, crafting your message. How important is it to get that message right and to really resonate then with your target audience, Allan?
Yeah, so important. We talked about force multipliers earlier on, and so messaging is really one of those force multipliers. So we talk about. I often picture it this way. So I'm kind of from a tech engineering background, so the phrase signal to noise ratio is meaningful to me, and I think it'll be meaningful to most people. So when you've got poor cell coverage or poor Wi-Fi or whatever, it's because often because there's too much noise and not enough signal. So there's maybe too many competing people. So like, if you're at a football stadium or something like that, and there's heaps of people trying to use their phone at the same time, there's too much noise going on and not enough signal. And so that causes communication difficulties, and it stops your message literally getting through. And the exact same thing is true when it comes to marketing. We're in a very noisy marketplace. Everybody is sending their signal out into the marketplace, trying to get people's attention. People's attention span is smaller and smaller than ever before. So, if you think about some of the platforms that are out there, so, remember when you used to maybe spend hours on Facebook, now you're flicking through TikToks every 5 seconds, right? So there's so much noise and so much happening in the marketplace. And so you need really, really powerful messaging or a really strong signal to get through the noise in the marketplace. And so that's incredibly important to do that, because otherwise, if you don't have a strong message, a powerful hook, something that gets attention, you're going to have to spend a lot of money on advertising, on interrupting people, on just getting in front of your audience to kind of get a mediocre message across. And it's probably not going to be profitable. You're probably going to have to do that at a loss. So people pay attention to things that interest them. And sometimes that thing is an advertising message. So we want to do that. We want to connect with what's going on with our audience, enter that conversation going on in their mind. What's keeping them awake at night? What are they afraid of? What are they angry about? So we want to enter some of that conversation going on in the mind of our audience, because that's going to help us cut through the noise in such a crowded marketplace. We want to increase our signal to noise ratio.
Yeah, I love that. And how important, Allan, is it to speak in the voice of the customer as opposed to speaking like we think, an international brand might speak? What's
Yeah.
your advice on that?
Well, my advice is to speak as plainly as possible. So I've got a little framework that I use. I call it the magnetic messaging framework. So I work with it with my clients. It's basically a 7-step framework to help you really clarify your messaging. It's not in the book. It's going to be in my next book, but I'll quickly run through it now. But basically, there's 7 steps. Is it about you or is it about them? So we want a message that's about your audience and their problem, because one of the biggest issues, people talk about themselves when it comes to marketing a lot. Hey, we're awesome, we founded our company in this year, we won these awards. And really, people care about what's in it for them, not about you. Next, is it easy to understand? So and this gels with the point that you just made, is do they have to expend a lot of calories trying to figure out what is this about and who's this for or whatever? Like, so many times I've gone to a website, and after 5 minutes of browsing, I still can't figure out what do these people do and who do they do it for, right? They're using all of these professional sounding jargon and language and all of that sort of stuff. So my little measure is, would my 12-year-old niece or nephew or son or daughter or whatever understand what this was about? And if they don't, then you've got a messaging problem. Like, if you have to explain it, you've kind of failed when it comes to messaging. The third thing is it believable? So often we can have an amazing offer, but it just doesn't pass the believability test. So can you show some proof? So can you back up what you're saying? The fourth one, is it interesting or unique? Can we put a little bit of a different unique spin, maybe on the way it's priced, the way it's packaged, the way it's delivered, something slightly unique. The fifth element, I call this good thing without the bad thing. So, for example, lose weight without giving up your favorite foods. So, and the bad thing is usually the objection when it comes to the sales context. So it's the thing that's going to stop someone from buying. They're like, yeah, look, I do want six-pack abs, but man, I love pizza. So if you can say, hey, you can get the good thing without the bad thing, that's going to really enter that conversation going on in their mind. And then number 6, is it clear who it's for? So we want the person to say, hey, that's for me. So being very, very clear who this is for. And finally, is the next action that you want them to take clear? Is there a physical, visible action that you're telling them to take? Because a lot of times people say, hey, I want a lot of awareness when it comes to marketing, and awareness is great, but awareness is a world of difference from action, right? What we want people to do is to take action. Click the link, click the buy now button, do the thing that you want them to do. So that's the 7th element. So I call that my magnetic messaging framework, and a lot of my clients find that very useful, and I hope that's helpful.
That's been really, really useful. Just as an aside, is that available on your website? Can people go and see those 7 steps, or is there a PDF somewhere?
Nowhere right now.
This is the debut release. You've heard it here. Brilliant. Well, look, it's a nice segue into the third component in terms of reaching our audience and the media platform that we should use. And again, you're not from marketing. You're not from a marketing background, Allan. My background's in finance. I mean, there's just so much noise out there. Every week there seems to be another platform being released. I have 3 teenagers, so you think you know what they're using, and then they say, "Oh no, we're now on this app or this channel." So, how do we select which media platform to use in order to reach our target audience once we've our message crafted?
Yeah, so a lot of times the media channel that we select is going to be relatively obvious once we've selected our target market, once we've got a powerful message. But one of the things that I often say is, where are your people? Like, where are they hanging out? So I kind of think, goes back to your target market. So I'm thinking of myself as the mayor of my town. So where are my townspeople living? And so there are different platforms that I like to use for research. For example, Reddit. I'm obsessed with Reddit just because it's so active, and there is just a niche of a sub niche of a sub niche of every literal thing that you can think of. For different niches, sometimes it's Reddit, sometimes it's Facebook, sometimes it's other platforms. So that's some online research that you can do. But the other real amazing hack, and I don't think I really mentioned that in the book, but I will in my next book as well, is I think a great shortcut is to go to an industry event of whoever your target market is. So if for example, let's say dentists are your target market, go to a dental industry conference, and you're going to find out more in a day of attending that conference about the things that they're afraid of, the things that they're wanting to do, the things that they're interested in, what's the major thing disrupting their industry right now, what's a major trend. You will learn that in a day more than you will in 6 months of online research, because they're going to have keynote speakers, they're going to have breakout sessions, you're going to be chatting to people in the break and things like that. And I often get invited to speak at industry events. Like I recently spoke at an IT event, and then prior to that I spoke at a pharmacy conference, and then I spoke at an automotive conference prior to that. Man, I have learned so much just in the few hours I spent at those conferences about what they're afraid of, what trends are happening, what they wanting to achieve, what some of the roadblocks in their industry are, than I ever would have just spending time online and trying to figure it all out myself. So I love that as a hack, and you'll figure out what media channels they use, what they consume, all of that. And I think that's a really, really cool hack, and you'll really learn a lot.
Yeah, brilliant advice there. And It's really being forensic and curious about where your people, where your townspeople hang out. So I really
Yeah.
love that. Moving on to what you described, the second act and the next three components. You know, you refer to capturing leads, nurturing leads, and then sales conversion. So I mean, this is maybe where we get into a little bit of the jargon, because there is a nuance between what you define as prospects and what you define as leads. So maybe even before we talk about capturing leads, that we share with our audience what we mean by leads versus a prospect, which we're trying to target in the first act.
Yeah, so if we break it down into kind of the three major types of people we're going to work with. So we're going to work with prospects, which is what we've been talking about now. So they're people who have no idea that you exist. Yeah. So they're people who you're maybe targeting, ideal target market for you, but they have no idea that you exist. Then we work with leads. So leads are people who've put their hand up. Maybe they've seen an ad, they've seen your book, they've seen your podcast, or they've come across you in some way, and they've kind of raised their hand and said, look, I'm vaguely interested in what you've got to offer. And that may be through a phone call to your office, that may be by clicking a link to your website, reading one of your blogs, one of your newsletters, maybe they got your book, whatever is relevant. And so that's now a lead. Now, someone who's raised their hand and said, look, I'm vaguely interested, that's a long way from someone who's bought from you. So, and then the third type of person is someone who's bought from you at least once. So, and we call those customers or clients or patients if you're in the medical industry. So either way. So really we're working with one of three types of people: someone who's a prospect, never heard of you, doesn't know you exist; a lead, someone who's, you know, kind of interested in what you've got to offer, but maybe not ready to buy right now; and then a customer, client, or patient, someone who's bought from you at least once.
Yeah. I love the clarity in that as well, because again, for our listeners, and maybe those listeners who are using different CRM packages, they'll have heard of opportunities and
Yeah.
You know, there's different jargon associated with our target band of customers. So prospects, leads, customers. I really like that.
So the point of our during phase, which we're entering now, so like we've got a message, we've got a target market, we've reached them with our advertising media. So now we're working with people who've maybe raised their hand and said, look, vaguely interested in what you've got to offer. And so that really kind of leads us into lead capture. So we want to capture those leads because, we find that on average, and this varies from industry to industry and situation to situation, but rule of thumb, about 3% of people are ready to buy today. And everybody's fighting for that 3%. Everyone's running ads for them. Everyone's cold calling. Everyone's doing cold outreach, all of that. And that's totally fine. Absolutely, we want to work with hot leads and people who are ready to buy. But there's a much, much bigger cohort of people who are ready to buy in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, a year. It's a much bigger cohort. It's something like maybe 40% of your addressable market. And so if we can create a system where we're not just targeting hot leads ready to buy today, that's fine. We do want those as well. But if we're sophisticated enough to be able to capture those leads and then nurture those leads over time, we're going to have a much, much bigger addressable market, because so many businesses are like, hey, are you ready to buy? What can I do to get you into a car today, right? Oh, no, you don't want to buy today? Okay, you're a tire kicker, right? And so that's a very, very short lived approach. It's very short-term thinking. So what we want to be thinking about is, if you sell anything of reasonable value, and most people do, there's going to be a consideration phase for someone who wants to buy that. So if you sell consulting, or if you sell property, or you sell investments, or you do anything of reasonable value, there's going to be a consideration phase for the prospect. You know, like I think about the last time I bought a car. You know, I bought an electric car, and then I was trying to figure out, okay, what kind of charger do I need? Okay, I'm going to have to get my garage refitted out, all sorts of stuff. So there was a reasonable consideration phase. Probably you didn't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to buy a car today, right? So you probably thought about what kind of car do you need? what do you want in terms of features? What do you want in terms of safety? What's a cool car? All of that sort of stuff. So, so it's likely if you sell anything of reasonable value, there's going to be a reasonable consideration phase, and that could be 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, a year, 2 years time. Sometimes in our coaching program, I'll speak to someone and say, how long were you on my mailing list before you bought from us? And sometimes it's been like 2 years someone's been on my mailing list. So if 2 years ago I had said, oh, this person's a tire kicker, they're not ready to buy today, that would have been a missed opportunity. And I would say the vast majority of people who buy from us have been on our mailing list or been in touch somehow well over 90 days. And so almost anyone can sell to someone who's ready to buy today. You can say, hey, great, sign the paperwork or click the buy now link. But it takes a little bit of marketing sophistication to create a process and a system where you can keep in touch with leads who are maybe not ready to buy today, but ready to buy sometime in the future. And so that's really what we want to do in the during phase, where we're capturing those leads and where we're nurturing those leads over time.
And we'll get on to converting those. Just for those listening who are servicing needs as opposed to offering a product to solve a problem, but they're servicing needs, how important is it in that capturing and nurturing phase to continue to bring value by way of content? Just in my own experience, almost everyone now who's offering a service has a blog or a newsletter that you can subscribe to. That seems very noisy and crowded. How, what's your view on that in terms of bringing value in terms of content without actually then giving away the jewels? And the second part of that is to make sure that it's actually relevant and can get heard amongst a lot of other blogs and newsletters and content that's out there.
Yep. Well, my philosophy is give away the jewels. Give your best stuff away. A lot of people worry, well, why would anyone buy from me? Well, why do you go to a live concert, go to Mono perform live if you can just listen to the MP3 or listen to it on Spotify or whatever, because it's a very, very different experience, right?
Yeah, so true.
So even though I could play U2's greatest albums over and over for free right now, every time they come to Melbourne, I go live to the concert. I pay a lot of money and I really enjoy it. So it's a very, very different experience. So particularly if you're in a knowledge or information kind of industry, give away your best stuff. Like I put my best stuff into the book, but still people still buy our certification program, our course, our coaching, all of those sorts of things, because it's a different experience. It's a different way to get the information. You can go deeper. You can work with someone one-on-one. You can get personalized and customized help and all of those sorts of things. So even though the fundamentals, the information, and we find this with all sorts of things, like the great universities, the Harvards and the Stanfords and everything like that, you can stream most of their lectures and all their curriculum for free online. So why would you attend those, pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to attend those universities? Again, very, very different experience because of some of the connections you're going to make, some of the people that you're going to meet, some of the questions that you can ask and interactions that you can have. So don't be afraid to give out your best stuff. Don't kind of hold it back, because that's going to draw people to you, and you're going to be able to have amazing conversations with people. And one of the things that I often say when it comes to sales conversion is conversations lead to conversions. So we want to have these great conversations. So if I had held my best stuff back, we probably wouldn't be on this podcast. You probably would have read like a mediocre book and said, whatever, just same old stuff. But I put my best stuff into it. And as a result, literally every week I'm invited onto a podcast. I'm invited to speak. I get opportunities that I never would have had before. And so that's a great form of leverage. We started out talking about leverage, and that's a great form of leverage, is package up your best stuff and just put it out there.
Yeah, brilliant. Before we leave the during phase, and especially in the context or certainly the focus of converting sales, because ultimately this is what we want to do, and the whole essence of this podcast is ultimately encouraging people, inspiring people to bring their wonderful product or service to the world. Is there any any advice you would give a little bit deeper on the sales conversion? At what point should we be asking for the business?
Yeah. So what we want to do, so there's kind of old sales methodology and there's new sales methodology. So old sales methodology goes like this. It's overcome objections. It's a numbers game. Always be closing. And they give you, like, I remember the first time I did like sales training, and it was just horrendous. Like you had to do these pushy little phrases, and you feel weird because like it's not a normal, natural kind of thing for you to be applying pressure to someone, and then the other person on the other end feels weird because you're putting all this pressure on them, and maybe they're not ready to buy today or whatever it is. And so it's a natural thing. If I create pressure and I push you, your natural reaction is going to be to push back. And now we've got an adversarial kind of a relationship when it comes to the sales process. And that's not what we want at all. So what we want to use is the new sales methodology. And new sales methodology is this. We want to get to the truth. We want to diffuse pressure, and we want to be a problem solver. So get to the truth is figure out, are we genuinely a good fit for each other? Like, and this is where we want to have a conversation. Like, so many times someone will be like, hey, our stuff is the best, you should buy it. Well, if you go to a doctor, hopefully you go to a doctor that follows a diagnosis process. Like if you go to a doctor and he just prescribes you medication without even hearing what's wrong with you, you'd be a little bit suspicious. You'd be like, most good doctors will say, okay, well, where does it hurt? And what happened? And what about when I twist it this way? And is it a dull kind of pain, or is it a sharp kind of pain, or whatever it is? So they kind of want to get to the truth of the situation. So what's happened? We're trying to make a diagnosis, figure it out. And they're like, okay, got it. Right. So this looks like this. And so they diagnose you, and then they give you a prescription. So that's really what we want to do when it comes to our sales methodology. And so if we've done the first 5 steps of the one-page marketing plan right, so meaning we've selected a good target market, we've got good messaging that cuts through, and we've reached them with advertising media that's right, and we've captured them and nurtured them over time. With the new sales methodology, it should be really easy and frictionless. It should be like we get on a call, we figure out, okay, seems like we're a good fit for each other, or maybe you're not, and this is where you've got to be come at it with an abundance mindset, where if someone is not a really good fit, you've got to just say that. You've got to say, look, based on what you told me, I don't think we're a good fit for each other. You might be better served with whatever, or this person, or this product, or whatever else, because you're going to save them a lot of pain. You're going to save yourself a lot of pain. You're not going to have suboptimal clients like we talked about. You're not going to have refund requests and complaints and all of those sorts of things. So we want to be working with optimal clients at all times. So we want to get to the truth. Then we want to diffuse pressure. So we don't want to create weird situations in the sales process where we're using some weird closes and things like that. And if they put pressure, sometimes the prospect will introduce pressure into the situation. They might say, look, your price is too high. And then we're like, no, our stuff is way better than the competition. And of course, yes, it is high, but it's much better than what the competition's got to offer, and so on. And now you're back into that adversarial relationship. So you want to diffuse pressure in a sales situation. And finally, you want to be a real problem solver. You want to be like, look, seems like there's a good fit between us. I can see you're really suffering with problem A, and like we've got a solution that will solve that. And so would you like me to present my proposed solution? And so if you're finding the sales process is difficult, adversarial, you're chasing people who've gone cold, they're not responding, whatever, it could be because you're creating pressure. You're using old sales tactics. And I'm an introvert. And I used to absolutely hate sales because I thought sales was all about doing these weird high pressure kind of things. And now I absolutely love sales because I just get to solve people's problem, be a force for good in their lives, and just have really cool conversations with really, really cool people that I love to work with. So that's kind of new sales methodology.
Yeah, I love that. So none of the car sales, the stereotype of the car sales guy tactics, sales tactics, and it's much more coaching, consultative about
Yeah,
connecting your wonderful product or service with a need, and that goes back to understanding your target market in the first place, because you're going
it
to
does.
expend a huge amount of energy if actually you're not trying to connect your wonderful product or service to those clients who exist in your target market, who are going to optimize the value they get from your wonderful product or service. So yeah, I really love that. It would be remiss of me not to ask a self-confessed IT geek about automating this entire kind of capture, nurture, closing sales conversion process. Anything
Yeah.
that you can recommend? I know there's so many systems out there, Alan, but from an SME perspective, is there any system that you would recommend?
Yeah. For sure. So before I talk about specific systems, I want to emphasize that when people kind of get into some of the marketing automation and some of the cool tools and things, some of the things we have, they're like, oh, cool. How do I automate all of my nurturing and all of my sales and things like that? And I often say, look, it's not about automation, it's about augmentation. So here's what I mean. So I don't know if you've ever watched the movie Iron Man.
Yeah.
So it's a normal geeky guy, Tony Stark. And so he's just a normal dude, right? But he puts on the Iron Man suit, and now he's got amazing powers. He can fly, he can fight bad guys, and all of this sort of thing. And so that's how I see technology when it comes to sales and marketing as well. It's not replacing you, it's not completely automating everything, but it's augmenting your abilities. So, meaning where you might have had to do one-on-one emails and things like that. Now you can do one-to-many. And so, but we don't want to lose the personal approach. So I'll give you an example of something that I do. So when people opt in into my mailing list, they'll get an email from our CRM system, which looks like it's from me. And it says, hey, welcome to the one-page marketing plan, or welcome to Successwise. What business are you in? Question mark. And ends the email that way. Now, this is an automated email, but when people reply to that, they say, hey, I'm a dentist, I'm a doctor, I'm a broker, or whatever. That's when either myself or someone from my team will give them a personal reply. So we're using automation to kind of create leverage, to give us a force multiplier. So we're able to connect with hundreds and thousands of people every single week. But then when they do respond, when they reply to one of those emails, they're getting a personal response. So that's a way that we can really create leverage using technology. And so, look, I recommend using a marketing automation CRM. And people always inevitably ask which one. And really, the best marketing automation CRM is the CRM that you'll actually use. Now, if people want to know what I use, I personally use Ontraport. I'm just as happy with something like Active Campaign or ConvertKit. Use whatever you will actually use. All these tools allow a free trial. It's really not in the actual tool that's going to make the difference. It's how you use the tool. You know, people think if they had Michelangelo's chisel that they'd be able to create, you know, the statue of David, and that's not the case, right? The chisel's just a tool, same as the marketing CRM. Pick one, you know,
Yeah.
whichever one you like, whichever one falls into your budget. But really using it is what makes the biggest difference.
Yeah, again, such wise advice. I really enjoy my sports, and people always ask me, well, what trainers, people who haven't ran before, let's say, what trainers should I get? You know, if I'm starting to run for the first time. Is it the trainers you're going to actually wear? So
Yeah,
anything, it doesn't matter at that
yeah.
stage. Just go and buy a pair of trainers that you're going to put on. So,
I'm
so
starting a new podcast. What microphone should I use? Yeah, doesn't matter, right? Just do it, right?
That's brilliant. So moving into the after phase, the after act, Alan, can you share with our listeners the three components of really, creating customers for life?
Yeah. So the after phase is somebody's bought from you for the first time, and now we want to make sure that we turn those into raving fans. How do we do that? So we want to create a world-class experience. We want to be working with optimal clients. And this is a recurring theme throughout, our discussion today, is that we want to work with people who are optimal, not just people who are transactional, because your bank manager will tell you that $1 from an optimal client is equal to $1 from a suboptimal client. They just see $1. And I'm here to tell you that that is absolutely the furthest thing from the truth. I call this the principle of the unequal dollar. So $1 or a pound or a rupee or whatever currency you're in, from an optimal client is far more valuable than that from a suboptimal client. Because again, we talked about, they're working with suboptimal clients. You're going to have difficult people, get people who pay late, get people who always want to talk to the CEO and cause issues or whatever, versus an optimal client who you love working with, they love working with you, they're a raving fan, they refer new business to you, they don't complain about price, they're just a pleasure to deal with, your team works with them, they will work in with the processes that you have, and so they're the ones that we want more of. And so what we want to do is we want to deliver a wow experience. People talk about being remarkable. So being remarkable means someone's going to remark on what you've done for them or what you've done with them. And so what we want to do is deliver a world-class experience. And so often you do that through technology, through business systems. I'll give you an example. So there's a great cafe not too far from where I live, but you can order the same dish, but depending on which chef is on duty at the time, it's going to come different. So, and not necessarily bad. It's not, they don't do a bad job, but one chef does it with, some little condiment on the side. The other chef doesn't do it that way. And so it's kind of different every time. And when you think about a business like McDonald's, like the food is pretty poor. Let's be honest, right? But it's consistent. You know exactly what you're going to get every single time. The fries are going to be the same. The burger's going to be the same. The drink's going to be the same. There are no surprises. And so that's a result of good business systems. So that's one of the ways that you're going to deliver a world-class experience, is by having good business systems where you're delivering a predictable product at a predictable price, and you're giving people that wow experience. So that's really, really important. Next, we kind of go into increasing customer lifetime value. So how can we go from someone who has purchased from us once or whatever, and get them to do more business from us? So get them to buy in more quantity, in more quality, and do business with us on an ongoing basis. So we talk about, in this phase, we call it increasing customer lifetime value. So how can we upsell more services? How can we use Ascension to get people to buy the next level or the next version from us? So there's a good reason why Mercedes, BMW, all the car manufacturers have different models, right? Yeah. So your first BMW might be a 3 Series, but then you might upgrade to the 5 Series, and then you might go to the 7 Series or whatever else, right? So that's Ascension. So how can you get your client to buy the next model up of what you've got? And then sometimes it's just about increasing frequency. So if you're a hairdresser and your client on average comes in, I don't know, 9 times a year, if you can get them to come in 12 times a year, well, you've now increased your revenue by 30% just right then and there.
The referrals, it's something that a lot of our listeners who again are in the service industry will rely upon. How do we optimize and, let's say, systemize the process of getting referrals?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways. One of the best ways, I often say to people, what's the best way to get what you want in life? And one of the best ways is just to ask. The receiving process starts with asking. And so often, if you're not getting enough of what you want in life, it's quite possible and quite probable that you've maybe got an asking problem. So a great way to do it is to ask. Like, for example, a lot of authors will ask me, how did you get so many reviews on Amazon reviews on your book? I say it's simple. I just ask, like when people will, very often people will email me, like literally every day I get people emailing and say, I love the book, I love like this or that or whatever about it. And I'll respond to them. I'll say, thank you so much. Appreciate your kind comments and everything. Please, would you mind just copying and pasting those nice comments that you sent me into an Amazon review for me? And of course, people are happy to comply with that and respond to that. So if you're not getting enough of what you want in life, potentially you may have an asking issue. So number one is ask. Number two is create an environment where referrals can easily happen. So it kind of really comes down to the psychology of referrals. Why do people refer new business to you? And a lot of people feel like it's like someone doing a favor for you. And if you're asking people to do a favor for you, you're going to probably be reluctant. You don't want to look like a beggar or look like you're desperate for business or whatever. And that's why a lot of people don't ask. But we need to kind of reframe that. So the last time that you watched a movie or went to a beautiful restaurant or something like that, and you told a friend about it, were you trying to do a favor to the movie producer or to the restaurateur or anything like that? Not really. You were like, you had a great time and you thought your friend would get a lot of value out of it. And then if your friend goes there and said, I went to that restaurant with my wife, I loved it, the food was magnificent, it makes you look and feel good, right? So you really created that referral for selfish reasons, because that kind of increased your status within your social circle, because you gave him this amazing experience. You probably didn't think twice about the restaurateur. You weren't like, hey, I want to help Bob the restaurateur. You were like, no, I had a great time, and if I tell my friend about it, he'll have a good time too. And that's kind of going to make you look and feel good about it. So can we recreate that environment on demand? So I talk about arming a referral network. So how can we arm our referral network? So can you make someone look good for referring you? So a really good example I use is my book, right? So often when I send a copy of my book to somebody, I'll send them 2 copies. So one is for them and one is for them to give away to a friend or a relative, or a colleague or whatever's relevant. And so them giving a copy of a book to somebody that they know will benefit from it, that makes them look good, because a book is worth maybe $20, $25 or the equivalent in whatever currency you're in. And so they're essentially giving a valuable gift to someone, valuable in terms of the physical cost of the thing, but also the value of the information that's in there. So if their friend comes back to them a few weeks later or whatever, said, that book you gave me, that was amazing. It really went into the depth with marketing, and I'm now starting to implement some of that in my business. Well, that's going to reflect back on them, and that's going to make them look good. But that's been something that's kind of, I've embedded that process, and I've embedded that ability for them to create referrals really, really easily, and I'm making them look good. So I'm not going out and saying, look, please do me a favor and just, would you please refer me some stuff? I really need the business. No, I'm not doing that. I'm arming them. I'm giving them something of value that will improve their status within their social circle if they create that referral.
That is brilliant. The simple act of gifting 2 books for someone to pass that on is wonderful. It's something I'm going to action from this amongst so much else. The last hour has absolutely flown, Allan. You've delivered so much value. I encourage people to go out and buy your wonderful book, The One-Page Marketing Plan. Those who are listening on the podcast won't be able to see this, but on YouTube, we'll put a link to the book in the show notes. I always close the podcast, Allan, by inviting our guests to share with our audience of SME leaders for 3 timeless takeaways.
Well, number one is, I'll say, look, the best marketer wins every time. I talk about this in the book. So you can have the best product, the best service, whatever it is, but you're not going to win in the marketplace if with that. That's a retention tool. So having a good product, a good service is a customer retention tool. We want customer acquisition. So the best marketer wins every time. And that's frustrating sometimes, especially when you've got a good product or a good service. So that's the first thing I'll say. The next thing I'll tell you is that almost all of the benefits that we get in life and in business, and in particular in marketing, come from compound interest. So what are the things that we're going to do daily, weekly, monthly that are going to make the difference? So, me exercising in the gym once a year probably won't make that much difference. But if I do it, if I'm in there and I'm lifting weights 3 times a week consistently, that's how I'm going to gain muscle. That's how I'm going to get rich financially, if I'm putting money into the bank account, in the investments and all of that on a regular basis. Doing it once off, probably not going to help that much. So that's the second thing that I'll say, is that the benefits in life often come from compound interest. And the third thing I'll say is, don't make the mistake that I made early on, which was trying to just, do things through trial and error. So many times as entrepreneurs, we've got what I call Superman syndrome, so you're Superman. If there's a problem, you'll solve it. If there's an issue, you'll handle it. If there's something that needs to be done, you'll get it done. And that caps out you're going to exhaust yourself. That's going to cap out your capacity. It's going to cap out your mental strength. So get help. Get someone to help you implement. Get someone to help you implement the leverage in your business. And so I would say to everyone here, use the tools that are available. There are so many tools, there are so many resources available for you to become a better marketer. Because remember what I said earlier, the best marketer wins every time, and I want you to win. So how can you become a better marketer? So, and kind of reframe your thinking. You're not a doctor, you're someone who markets medical services. You're not a lawyer, you're someone who markets legal services. You're not an IT guy, you're someone who markets IT services. So create that reframe in your mindset and become the best marketer you can possibly be.
Oh, sage advice. And it speaks firmly to the very first principle of our 10 principle Scale X framework, which is psyche, which is really understanding your identity and become, what you're saying is, become that person who people want to connect with and who want to engage you for your valuable product or service. So I love that, Allan. You mentioned at the outset you're writing a new book. Can you share with us when that'll be released?
Only God knows with that. But I'm
putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, I'm working on it as we speak. I'm really hoping mid next year, but
Okay.
I'm working on it daily at the moment. And so I really, rather than working to a specific time frame, which sounds like a bit of a cop out and probably is a bit of a cop out, but I'm just trying to make it the best possible book it'll be.
Oh, brilliant. I've no doubt it'll be another raging success. I wish you all the very best with that. Allan, if people want to connect with you, where best to reach you?
Yeah, so our website is successwise.com. You can get the book anywhere where books are sold. So it's available on Kindle. It's very popular on audio. So it's on Audible if you prefer to listen rather than read. And yeah, so grab the book. We send an email newsletter 3 times a week with marketing tips. So that's at successwise.com. And I'd love to connect and have a conversation with you.
Allan, it's been an absolute privilege to have you on the show today. Again, you've delivered so much value. I want to acknowledge and thank you for sharing your time, your wonderful energy with myself and our listeners today. Take care.
It's my pleasure.